I like the fact that we started early.
You do?
Are my hands ashy? Because you know people will talk about you if you got ashy hands. Kind of ashy, but...
Hold on a sec. Because if you're talking to me, I can't hear you.
If you have no idea what you just stumbled upon, you were scrolling and feed and I just popped up. Hi, I am Marta. I am the author and chef over at senseandedibility.com. I call it my online culinary school where I teach you everything you need to know about cooking, baking, and cocktail making because cocktails are life, especially in 2020. Today I'm showing you how to make my pumpkin cheesecake with Gingersnap Crust. You can also make it with a graham cracker crust if you don't feel like making it with ginger snaps, so it's fine too. And since this is it's not a hard recipe, but because I'm so passionate about cheesecakes and the way that they are made, I have a lengthy process when it comes to baking my cheesecakes and cooling my cheesecakes. It is a process that is well worth the effort, but it takes time. So we need to get started because we're going to be here for a minute. Sorry. All right. So first things first, wash your hands. We've washed our hands. We are sanitized and hygienic now. Turn on your oven to 350 degrees. That is 177 degrees Celsius for people who are not in the States. Turn on your oven. Oven is on. Okay. The ingredients for this pumpkin cheesecake with Gingersnap Crust are crushed Gingersnap cookies. These are 2 cups of crushed or processed Gingersnap cookies. When you're looking for cookies to use as a crust for your cheesecake, find the driest, crispest cookies you can find, right? I hate crunchy cookies, but in this case I need them because I don't want my crust to be soggy. I want it to be crisp. I want it to be crunchy. So what I do, and people may not like it, but I go into the grocery store and I pick up a bag of cookies and I try to crush them in my fingers through the bag. If they don't crush, that's the ones you want. You want really hard, crisp Gingersnap cookies. So these are Stauffer's Gingersnap cookies that I'm using here. And all I did was I threw them in my food processor and I pulsed them until they look like fairy dust. Now I got it under my nails. To finish the crust, you're going to need 3/4 of a stick or 6 tablespoons or 85 grams of unsalted butter. And we're going to melt this butter. Matter of fact, I'm going to do it now so that it's melting while I tell you about the rest of the stuff. How I melt my butter. I cut it up in tablespoons, cover it with a paper towel, or you can use the butter wrapper. Cover it like that and put it in my microwave and blast it for about 30 seconds. It's like, I'm gonna do it for like 20 seconds because what's gonna happen is my butter's gonna overflow just because I'm on the TV. Because again, God likes to keep me humble. What was I talking about? Butter. If you don't want to use Gingersnap cookie crumbs because you don't have them, you don't feel like going out to get them, you can use graham cracker crumbs. You'd use the same amount. Not done.
Mandy wants to know if she could toast them if they're not as crispy, or that would change the flavor. Would that change the flavor?
Well, if they're not crispy coming out of the package, they're not going to be crispy. So what the brand has done is added some stabilizers, some shelf stabilizers or some softeners to the cookie to make sure it stays soft for as long as possible. So you toasting them won't make a difference. So you want to one, you want to go into this with what you need so that there's no unknown variables. But two, don't pay somebody to have to run up your electric bill toasting your cookies. Get crisp cookies. So here's what I'm thinking, right? If you don't like Gingersnap cookies, or you don't want to get them, you can use graham crackers. You can use oatmeal cookies. You can use Nilla wafers. You can use molasses cookies. Just make sure they are hard. And when you go to break them, they like take some effort. So they're dried out, crisp cookies, things that I would never get, are perfect for this recipe. I have my melted butter. I melted it. That took 40 seconds. So I could have done the 30 seconds, but I wasn't going to try my luck. So this is what we need for the Gingersnap Crust. 2 cups of Gingersnap cookie crumbs and 3/4 of a stick or 6 tablespoons or 85 grams of unsalted butter that has been melted. Let the butter cool down a little bit because you're going to get in there with your hands and you don't want to burn your precious fingers. Okay. Any questions about crusts? No. Okay. For the cheesecake itself, you're going to need 4 8-ounce packages. I don't know how much that is in grams. 4 8-ounce packages. They're the regular packages of cream cheese that are at room temperature. I have gone as long as overnight, so 12 hours, leaving my cream cheese on the countertop. None of us in our family have died. None of the people that have eaten my cheesecake have died. There are so many stabilizers in this cream cheese that you can leave it out for that long and be safe. You want it room temperature, no chill on it at all. Full fat cream cheese, please. It's the holidays and holiday calories don't count. In addition to the cream cheese, you're going to need 1/3 of a cup of cornstarch or all-purpose flour. I make rich New York style cheesecakes. And to do that, I use cornstarch or flour to give body to my cheesecakes. I don't like light, airy, puffy, fluffy cheesecakes. I like something with some grit to it, like New York City, right? I want my cheesecake to wear Timbs. I don't want my cheesecake to be a Wall Street broker. I want my oven is ready. That's what you want.
Rubbing it raw.
So in addition to the cornstarch, the spice blend that you're going to use to flavor this cheesecake is 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 3/4 of a teaspoon of ground nutmeg, 3/4 of a teaspoon of ground ginger, 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves, 1/4 teaspoon of ground allspice, which is optional. You don't have to use the allspice. I love the way allspice makes my cheesecake taste, but I know that nobody hardly ever uses allspice. But you need 1/4 teaspoon of ground allspice if you're using it, and then 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. That's what's going. We'll work on that. That's that. You're going to need the zest of 1 medium lemon. That's about a tablespoon of zest. Y'all got heck of laughing over here. Yeah, I'm going through the ingredients.
Sorry.
You're going to need 1 1/4 cup of granulated white sugar, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, a whole can of packed pumpkin puree, because we ain't messing with like leftover pumpkin, and 1/4 cup of heavy cream at room temperature, 4 eggs, 4 large eggs at room temperature. We don't ever bake with anything other than large eggs. Always buy large eggs for your baking. Use them for your baking because they are perfectly 1.36 ounces. Always use large eggs. Make sure your ingredients are all at the same temperature so that they can all mix perfectly together. Are there any questions? Any rogue statements?
Shell said stomping with the big dogs cheesecake.
Okay.
And
Listen.
Jocelyn says you just want the internet with the I want my cheesecake to wear Tim's. That was funny.
We are gully with cheesecakes. Okay. Listen. There are some dishes that I want to be refined and classy. I want my cheesecakes to be like hood. I want a hood cheesecake. Okay. So y'all are bad influences. Okay. First things first, we need to bake our Gingersnap crust. And to do that, we need to make our Gingersnap crust. So we're going to take this melted butter and we're going to add it to our Gingersnap crust, or our Gingersnap crumbs. Understand something. If you're using Gingersnap cookie crumbs, it already has sugar in it. So you don't want to add more sugar. Graham crackers are less sweet than these cookies are going to be. So if you're going to make it with graham cracker crumbs, add about 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar to your graham crackers. That's if you want. I'm okay with just making a plain graham cracker butter crust because we're not like super heavy on sweets here. I mean, we love our desserts, don't get me wrong. Hello. But it's okay. It doesn't make a huge difference to me. But if you like a really, really sweet cheesecake, add 2 tablespoons of sugar to your graham cracker crust. But I'm not doing that because the Gingersnap cookies have enough sugar in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the butter that we melted to my Gingersnap cookie crumbs. And because God has given me 2 fully capable hands, I'm going to use them, one of them, to blend or mix the butter into the cookie crumbs. And I'm going to show you how to determine if you need more cookie crumbs or more butter or whatever. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing the crumbs in my hand, and if they hold together like this, then the crust is perfect. I'm kind of feeling it in my soul, and understand something about me. Feel your food and your recipes in your heart. I feel in my soul that I need just a smidge more graham crackers or Gingersnaps crust, crumbs, things. Because you see how it's kind of leaving a sheen on my hands? I feel that it has like a milliliter too much butter. Right? And I hear it. It's going squish, squish. And I don't like that. So Hector is going to grab me. Can you grab me those crumbs? You don't know where they're at, yo. See? So here's a recommendation. When you pulse your Gingersnap crumbs, pulse the whole bag, unless you're just like gonna dip into it in the middle of the night, which I'm not judging you. If you're gonna dip into it in the middle of the night, stash some to the side, but then pulse the entire bag so that you have it ready to go for future cheesecake. I mean, we're just at the beginning of the holiday season, so you're gonna wanna make more of these cheesecakes. So now I have them ready to go, and I can just add them to my bowl like that, and put them back here. Because I know that that's perfect. Look, now it's perfect. It's not leaving any sheen on my hand. It's not doing that squish that I don't like. So, I'm going to grab my 9-inch springform pan. This is why it's called the springform pan, because it springs. It has a color that springs, allowing you to make a cheesecake without ruining it. Really? Okay, God. I'll calm down. Move that. Okay. Without ruining it when you take the color off. So I'm putting all the Gingersnap crumbs into the bottom of my springform pan. I'm gonna give my hand a rinse. Oh, I hate it when stuff gets under my fingernails. That's why I don't have girly hands.
No grease on the pan?
No, you don't need to grease the pan at all, I promise. Because remember, this is nothing but Gingersnap crumbs and butter. So the butter acts as a barrier. Plus, most springform pans are non-stick anyways. So it's not going to stick, I promise. I've never, ever, in my of baking, ever had a cheesecake stick to the pan. What I'm doing is I'm taking the bottom of a measuring cup and I'm pressing the Gingersnap crust into the bottom of my cheesecake pan or my springform pan into an even layer. I don't want bulges. I don't want, peaks and valleys, because guaranteed somebody's going to complain that they got a little bit of crust and somebody else is going to be like, ooh, I got more crust than you. And then there's going to be like a cage fight at the Thanksgiving dinner table. And while most of us are used to that, we're trying to do new things in 2020. So press.
Fred says hi.
Hi, Fred. So press your Gingersnap crust into the bottom of the pan and make sure you get a nice little, do a nice little crust or, side crust on it. Just come up just a little bit. It doesn't need to be extensive. Like, you don't need to have a lot of side crust, but it makes for good Instagram pictures. Okay, so I'm doing that. Now what I'm going to do is pop it into the oven, pop this crust into the oven for 10 minutes. And my trick to know when my crust is done is when I smell it, it's calling me. It's saying, I'm ready to come out. And I go and grab it. So 10 minutes in the oven, make sure, please. This is like a crock pot and not being turned on before you go to work for the day. Make sure your springform pan is clipped closed. Don't ask me how I know to do that, but all right. Putting it in the oven for 10 minutes. All we need to do is toast it a little bit. We don't need to, it's not an extensive thing. Because again, it's going into the oven for an hour and 15 minutes with the rest of the cheesecake. So you just want to get it nice and toasty. Get it settled. Any questions? No?
I'm not going to blow up Fred's spot, no question.
What Fred said?
He said he forgot the springform pan.
Fred, you can make cheesecake. Hey, that's a good intro. You can make cheesecake in a regular cake pan. I used to do it all the time when I was too poor to afford a springform pan. The only issue with cheesecakes in a cake pan is that you gotta pray to gods and sacrifice goats and do a whole bunch of stuff to get the actual cheesecake out. It's very labor intensive, but it can be done. So if you put it in a regular cake pan, use a 9 or 10 inch cake pan, do the crust like we just did, put it in the oven, bake it for 10 minutes. You're gonna bake the cheesecake like you normally would. You're going to have to separate the sides of the cheesecake from the cake pan with a knife, and then you're going to have to flip it over. Sometimes, especially after chilling in the refrigerator, the crust wants to stick to the bottom of that pan, and also because most cake pans are not nonstick, you're going to have to coax it out by heating the bottom of the pan a little bit. Remember when I used to do that when we were poor? We still aren't rich, but whatever. We're less poor than we were.
We're less poor than we used to be.
But I used to do that by sitting it on a burner. The burner was set to medium heat, and I would heat the bottom of the cake pan to kind of loosen up that butter that was in the crust, and then I would flip it over onto a plate and flip it back over onto the plate I wanted to serve it on. And that's how you can do it. You don't need to have a springform pan. A springform pan makes your life a lot easier. So
Mandy wants to know if you can use a parchment and a regular pan.
yes, but a regular cake pan.
Mm-hmm.
Don't use a parchment. The parchment is unnecessary. You don't need the parchment. because even if you attempt to pull out the parchment from the cake pan, you risk cracking the cheesecake, and we don't want to do that. So it's easier to do that method of heating the bottom of the cake pan to loosen up the butter and the crust, flip it over, just like you're turning out a cake onto something, and then you flip it back over onto the platter you want to serve. So that's the best way to do that. Okay.
Rock and roll.
All right, we got 8 minutes on our crust. Here is another way. Have you ever had to seen a cheesecake of mine with a crack in the middle? Never. We've been married almost 22, we'll say 22, because God knows I've been struggling. We've been married for a very, very long time, and I've been cooking since before we got married, because I was trying to impress him and get a man and whatever. But I have never produced a cheesecake with a fault in the middle, with a crack in the middle, and that is because I take measures to protect my cheesecake against cracks. And the biggest measure you can take to protect your cheesecake against cracks is baking your cheesecake in a water bath. So those of you who don't have a springform pan, you actually have the advantage here, because you don't have to worry about wrapping it in such a way to keep it from, keep water from getting into that pan. Those of us that are using a springform pan have to take measures. But before we get to that, we have to create the water that we're going to be baking our cheesecake in, which is a bain-marie, or Marie's bath, which is a water bath, which the French always got a classy way of calling things, simple things, super fancy things, right? A water bath is just a very controlled environment in which to bake something or cook something. So a water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not going to boil. It's not going to get any hotter than that. It's not going to get, that just is what it is. So it creates a very constant controlled temperature in which to bake our cheesecake. So there's no fluctuation of the environment in which our cheesecake is baking, so it won't crack. I, again, have made the mistake of thinking I turned my oven off to cool my cheesecake. The oven was still on at 350. I baked it for another 30 minutes, only to realize the oven was still on and the cheesecake still didn't crack. This is almost a foolproof way of ensuring, of ensuring that your cheesecake will not crack. It is worth the effort, is what I'm telling you. And I say all that to say, get a pot, fill it with about 4 cups of water, put it on the stove to medium, and get it to boiling while we get into the batter. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. I have a pot here, and I've already filled it with 4 cups of water. This is the pan that I'm going to end up putting my springform pan in later. You want a pan that is shallow and flat like this, so that you can put your cheesecake into this pan. Obviously, it needs to be bigger, right? You can use a disposable aluminum pan and keep it for life as this is my cheesecake pan. You can use something like this. Is an all-clad saucier. It's huge. It's like a roasting pan. It's not huge. It's like 12 inches. But all I use this almost exclusively for my cheesecakes. It's big enough for me to set the cheesecake pan inside and still have room on the edges. What you don't want is something like so shallow that you can't pour water into it without getting it into the cheesecake, because that's a disaster. But grab a large pan, right? Something like this that you can use later. You want it to be at least 2 to 3 inches bigger than the cheesecake pan. Okay. Do you have something you want to say? Because you're over here giggling like a lot.
Fred said he always had a crack.
Fred, we're about to change that. We're going to change that with this recipe, I promise. While we have 3 minutes left on our crust, right? And it's gonna come out in 3 minutes. So while we're waiting for that, I want to get started on the spice bulker body upper portion of our cheesecake. Remember, I said I do like gully cheesecakes. Like, I'm not gonna say hood rat cheesecakes because they're not hood rats, but my cheesecakes are like
your cheesecake got a record.
Our cheesecakes got street cred, okay? Anyways, so our cheesecakes are no punks, is what I'm saying. My cheesecakes stand up to a lot. And they do that because I add my cornstarch, and if I don't have cornstarch, I add flour. I avoid adding flour because if I have friends who have gluten intolerances, like they're not gluten free, but they try to avoid excessive amounts of gluten, I use cornstarch because it reduces the amount of gluten that goes into the cheesecake. There's already gluten in the cookies. You can make it gluten-free if you use a gluten-free cookie, but there's already gluten in the cookies, but I'm not going to add to the madness by adding more flour to it. So I usually add cornstarch. But now I'm going to add all of my spices. So remember we used cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, cloves, allspice, and salt. Salt, I tell people, are like earrings in a recipe, especially when you're baking. Salt or earrings. I don't need them, but they make me look a little bit cuter. So you don't need salt in your cheesecake recipe, but it just brightens the flavors just a little bit. So all I'm doing is mixing my spices with my cornstarch. That's it. That's done. Look how cute my little whiskies. Sort of top. Okay.
Bobby Gaines.
Bobby Gaines.
If the pan is bigger or different shape, does the water amount need to change? Like, does the water need to reach a certain height on the spring pan?
Yes, good question.
Bobby, you know
Bobby Gaines was in the AP classes in high school. He's so smart. Great question, Robert Gaines Jr. All right. But the oven has interrupted you. Hold on. So we're pulling out our crust. Look at that crust. Boop. Look, it's done. All right, I'm going to set it over here. I don't care nothing about these countertops because I hate this place. Okay. Yes. If you say you have a big roaster pan, right? And you put 4 cups of water in your pan, it comes up to like a quarter of the way on the springform pan. That's not going to do you any good. What you want is to add enough boiling water to reach halfway up this pan, right? Halfway up this pan. You could go higher. I'm not going to tempt fate. I go halfway because if I go any higher, when I'm moving the pan in and out of the oven, I'm going to splash. And getting water into your custard of any kind has the potential to ruin it. So just put enough water, enough hot or boiling water, so that it reaches halfway up the sides of your pan. Great question, Bobby Gaines.
It's a gold star.
He gets a gold star for today. That's how. Watch that. So as soon as this is... Okay. As soon as your non-asbestos hands can handle this, how many people are actually doing this at the same time as me?
I don't know.
Because I don't want them burning their hands, but we all know that I have, like my heart, I have no feelings in my
Not true.
So what I'm doing, and this is how we're going to hopefully potentially avoid waterlogging our cheesecake. I want you to take 2 sheets of heavy duty aluminum foil. If you have regular aluminum foil, stop spending your money on that. Just buy heavy duty because that is more durable. And it's worth it, like it, you're getting your money's worth out of that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap the bottom of my cheesecake pan in this foil. Okay. Obviously, I'm not going to cover the top of the cheesecake, the springform pan with the foil, but I'm going to make sure to make a very conscious, intentional effort to press the foil against the pan to create a very tight fitting seal. Again, we do this because the reason why we're even using a water bath is because we want to ensure that we don't get that crack in the cheesecake. But we need water to do that, and water loves to get into places it ain't got no business getting into. So we help keep it out of those cracks that are in the bottom of this springform pan by wrapping it in 2 sheets of foil. Some people only wrap it in 1. I'm neurotic, so I say why not 2? So do the same thing with this next layer of foil. As you're folding back the top part, make sure that it's not like leaving a gap here in between the pan and the foil, because you don't want any little bits of water to seep into that part. Make sure also that as you're forming the foil to the pan, you're not creating any cracks or tears in the foil. Listen, it happens to the best of us. Water may get into the foil. If it gets into the foil, it's not, I promise, it's not a big deal. Now, you don't want to pull the pan out of the water bath after it's done baking and have a deluge of water coming out of the foil. That's no good, but it's fixable. You just put it back in the oven for a little while to warm it and sweat off all that water. But that's not going to happen because we're taking measures. All right. So I'm pressing the bottom of this foil to the pan. Nothing's happening. This is not going to go bad. Okay. I'm passionate about the cheesecake. I'm just going to set this into that pan that I showed you earlier. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Question?
No. Hassel's making it in Carla Harmer's.
All right. Well, let's get it.
And Angie Leftwich said Angie Tyler said she has to watch it a few times before she attempts it.
All right. So we have 4 8-ounce bricks of cream cheese that I have left sitting out since 8 o'clock this morning. It is completely, I could stir this with a spoon and be fine, but I'm not going to. To my cream cheese, I'm going to add 1 1/4 cups of regular granulated sugar, just white sugar. I'm also going to add a tablespoon or the peel of 1 medium lemon. Use a microplane or a very fine grater to zest your lemon. You don't want to use a big box grater because that's going to leave huge chunks of lemon peel in your cream cheese, and that's just, I mean, if you don't have a microplane, you don't need to use a lemon. I like using the lemon zest because it brightens up the flavor of the pumpkin cheesecake so that it's not too muddy or too earthy or too warm. It kind of adds another element of flavor. It's not a deal breaker though. Save the lemon for lemon juice. You can still slice it and put it in your water or whatever you need. Don't waste food. In addition to the sugar, the cream cheese, the lemon zest, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla bean paste. I love using vanilla bean paste because I like the specks that it gives my cheesecake. You can also use vanilla extract, and you would use the same amount. 2 teaspoons of vanilla. It's going to get loud. I need my eggs over there because I'm a righty. So I need my eggs to be on that side. Oh my gosh, you guys, look at my spatula. It's so cute. Look. Oh.
Melissa Clairberg says she has to run to an appointment, but she's coming back to watch the whole thing.
Okay. All right. I'm going to start blending this or mixing this all together on low speed for about a minute. Low speed. Not a minute. Yeah, about a minute. Yeah. I hate having to give precise times because it's just like until it's all mixed together. That makes more sense to me. Okay, so I still see sugar at the bottom of my thing. I hope you guys appreciate the fact that I'm using a clear bowl. That was so you can see what I'm doing. Now I'm going to stop it. Now that everything's combined, it's not blended, it's combined, right? You can't tell that there's sugar, that there's lemon zest, that there's vanilla in here. That's what combined means. I'm scraping down the bowl. And then I'm going to, do this thing with my beater. What am I doing? That thing that I just did. Wow, my brain just stopped for a second there. Okay, anyways, now I'm going to crank it up to second speed. And finally up to high. So that I can get everything blended really well. And this is the reason, can they hear me really well? I feel so bad about talking. That's the reason why I told you to leave your cream cheese out for as long as possible, because you don't want clumps of cream cheese in your cheesecake. There is nothing worse than that. It brings so much shame on me when I see that. If it's my cheesecake. I mean, if it's yours, I'm going to be like, oh, you did a good job. Look at you.
Everybody said they can hear you fine.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
Laura asked, where do you find vanilla bean paste? I think it's in the spice aisle.
Yes.
Right?
It's in the baking aisle with the regular vanilla extract. You see my water's boiling, so I'm going to turn it down because I don't want to create too much steam. It's not that it's a bad thing if it creates steam. Yeah, in the baking aisle where your vanilla extract is, I don't know why it's always on the top shelf, but look on the top shelf. It's in a little thing. If you can't find vanilla bean paste, don't stress yourself out. Just use vanilla extract. So now that my cream cheese is completely blended with my sugar and the vanilla and the lemon zest, I'm going to add my eggs. Add your eggs one at a time to any batter. I don't care if it's regular cake, cupcakes, cookies, one at a time. You want the batter to become cohesive and homogeneous. You don't want to dump all the eggs in there and think to yourself, oh, I only need to mix this 3 minutes. And then you come out later and you have a big old clump of yolk. That's horrible. So you're going to add the eggs one at a time. To the cheesecake, or to the cream cheese, because it's not cheesecake yet. Once the yolk from that first egg, or from that egg that you just added, has been blended into the batter, scrape down your bowl. Maybe it's because I was traumatized during culinary school, but I am a stickler about well-blended batters. Scrape down your bowl after every time you mix. Go ahead and add the next egg, and you're going to do this 4 times with each egg. You'll notice that as you mix the batter, it'll become lighter and fluffier and more airy. And that's the reason why we we take the time to add these eggs one at a time. We don't want to overwhelm the batter with too much liquid or too many eggs at one time.
Bobby said that the commentary don't have that thing.
It sure does. Yes, it does. I know it does.
Carla says, somebody put my eggs away.
Oh
no. And Bobby asked if does the egg temperature matter?
Yes. Everything matters when you're attempting to make a cohesive batter, right? So if you add cold eggs to something, listen, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a deal breaker. You'll still end up with a cheesecake, but will it be the best cheesecake? No. And I know Bobby well enough to know that Bobby is as neurotic as me. So he wants a perfect cheesecake. That said, everything that goes into this bowl should be the same temperature. The only way to do that is to make it all room temperature. Because you're not going to make canned pumpkin refrigerator temperature, are you? I'm not. Okay, last egg went in. Water is boiling for our water bath, so we know that it is at the proper temperature to be used. And we're almost done making our cheesecake batter. All right, no lumps. You see that there is nothing hanging on my beaters. So I'm just, well, now there's something hanging on my beaters, but you know, it is what it is. All right, so now I'm going to open up my 100% pure pumpkin. Hey, Libby's, you ain't sponsoring me yet, but
how you doing?
I'm here. How you doing? So I'm going to add a full can of pumpkin because I don't have time to be figuring out what to do with a quarter cup of pumpkin puree. If you want to use fresh pumpkin, go for it. Make sure it's not too watery because that might change the consistency or the texture of the baked cheesecake. So I'm just using the entire can, scooping it all out. Put it in there. Sorry, friends. And I'm adding, and that's a 15-ounce can of pumpkin. And it's not pumpkin pie filling. That's very important because pumpkin pie filling has stuff added to it to make it looser. Pure packed pumpkin. And I'm adding a quarter cup of heavy cream to the batter. And I'm just blending it just until the pumpkin and the cream are incorporated into the rest of the batter. Now is the time where you can beat this at high, you can beat this on low, it doesn't matter how you beat it. The next step is where it counts. So here you can beat it on high. Stop it, scrape down the bowl because I don't care how long you mix it, if you don't scrape down this bowl, the batter that's hanging out on the sides of the bowl and right in the bottom in the nooks and crannies it's going to stay there. It's not going to leave. So you're going to have an unevenly mixed batter.
Bobby said fat equals magic.
Fat equals what?
Magic.
That is a good thing. Keeps us warm during the winter. All right.
And Mandy said thank you for using the whole can because she hates pumpkin leftovers.
I hate it too. All right, now my batter is evenly mixed. I know that because I added orange pumpkin to a white creamy batter, and I would be able to tell if it wasn't evenly mixed. If you do not have all those spices that I just mentioned, well, maybe this won't work, but go to my blog and search for pumpkin pie spice because Instead of using all the individual spices, you can use this pumpkin pie spice, and you would just use 3 and 1/4 teaspoons. So just use a tablespoon. A tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice from the blog. Or you can use a store-bought stuff. But it's not, I'm telling you, if you use store-bought pumpkin pie spice, it can't hold a candle to like freshly made pumpkin pie spice. It doesn't. You smell good. Add your cornstarch spice mixture to the bowl. Understand something. Once we've added this to the bowl, we're not going to mix like psychos, okay? We're just going to mix just until it's incorporated, because what cornstarch will do if you overmix it is cause your cheesecake to be gummy. So we just want to mix it just until it's incorporated. On low. Keep it on low speed. So I'm breaking up the bigger chunks of cornstarch. My batter is starting to take on some color from the browns, from the allspice and the cinnamon. I'm going to stop my mixer and scrape down my bowl. And you can see, I don't know if you can see, but there's still clumps of cornstarch that are still hanging out at the surface. So I'm using my rubber spatula to kind of encourage them to do what I want them to do, which is get into the batter. And I'm going to keep mixing on low just until I don't see those big clumps of cornstarch anymore. Okay. My heart is telling me to stop, so I'm going to stop. Just once you no longer see that white from the cornstarch, that's annoying, you're going to stop mixing. All right, our batter is done. Our cheesecake batter has been battered, mixed into a batter. Okay, so I'm gonna put everything to the side because I want to have room. All right, I always do that. I don't know why I do this, but it's habit. I just give it a final fold. All right. Now remember, I have my, whatchamacallit. I'm feeling kind of odd about this. I don't know what happened to my, I didn't open my pan, did I? All right, my cheesecake crust is kind of funky on that side. You see that? That's right. It's gonna do the thing. All right. So I have my cheesecake wrapped, my cheesecake pan, my springform pan wrapped in foil. I'm going to pour my batter into this prepared pan. What's going to happen is somebody's going to get extra cheesecake on the side of their slice. And watch, it's going to be Hector, who didn't even do anything. I'm going to get stuck with
I'm blessed.
You are blessed with a T. All right. Get all of that batter. Don't you leave no batter behind. Get a rubber spatula. If you don't have one, get one. Get a high heat rubber spatula too. Don't get like don't buy those rubber spatulas from the grocery store that are hanging on the. Don't buy those. But those things are straight. They're not good. They're not New York City rubber spatulas. I'm not gonna say what they are, but they're not good. All right. All my cheesecake batter is in my pan. I'm gonna do this just because I do it. I want to get the surface of my cheesecake batter to be as level as possible. This water is persistent. Now, you're probably asking, why does she have a big old spatula in her hand? It's because I am notoriously messy sometimes, especially when I'm being watched. So I'm using this spatula as a barrier between the surface of my cheesecake and the water that I'm getting ready to pour into my outer pan to create my water bath. If you don't have a spatula, I mean, this is pretty obnoxious. I'm gonna be transparent. I probably stole this from a restaurant I worked at, but I deserved it because they were paying me slave wages. So don't judge me for my hustle, okay? I needed this. I don't know why I needed it, but I did. If you're not a dishonest thief like me.
Nancy Wheatley just joined and heard you say all of that.
The chaplains might just heard me say this. Okay. Forgiveness. God has forgiven me for that. If you don't have a big obnoxious spatula, you can use a pastry cutter. But if you don't have a big obnoxious spatula, you probably don't even know what a pastry cutter is. But this is a pastry cutter. This is what we use to cut fat into flour to create pastries. You can use this. You can use a spoon, but point the bowl of the spoon this way, away from the cheesecake. You can use a rubber spatula. So you just point it like that. You can also just use, your steady hand. I don't have a steady hand, obviously. So all I'm doing is I'm going to not pour it over the handle because that's just an accident waiting to happen. I'm going to pour the hot water into the outer pan, avoiding the inner pan, using the spatula as a barrier between the top of the cheesecake pan and the water. Done. That's still clean. We don't need to wash that.
It's disinfectant.
It's disinfected too. And so is my spatula. Well, if I do that, it won't be. All right.
So,
Yes. Let's put this in the oven and then we can take questions, right? So here's how I do this. And this is the reason why it's so good to have a pan that has handles. Shout out to Allclad, who's not sponsoring this, but probably should. I like having handles because I can grip the handles but push down on the cheesecake pan with my thumbs so that it doesn't slosh about when I go to move it to the oven, which is not open, which I need to open. Crap. Okay. I'm almost there, guys. Oh. Slide it in carefully. Don't slosh that water. Set your timer for an hour and 15 minutes. Once the timer is finished, once the timer goes, hey, I'm done, turn the oven off. Turn it off. Remember to turn it off. Don't be like me and think you turned it off and think that because you've done this for 20 plus years that you know everything. Turn the oven off. Open the door 1 inch to 2 inches and let the oven cool down slowly. And in turn, the cheesecake cools down slowly and prevents that fault that rivals the San Andreas. We don't want that. After it has cooled in the oven gradually for an hour, remove it, the entire ensemble, water bath and cheesecake, from the oven, put it on your countertop. Take the cheesecake pan out of the water bath, unwrap it. Remember, if it has a little bit of water in the bottom, it's okay. Don't worry about it. But let it cool outside of the water bath, unwrapped from the foil, on the countertop. Don't take it out of the springform pan. Leave it in the pan. And let it cool on the countertop for another 30 to 45 minutes.
okay. Carla asked
Questions?
if she can use. Hold on, I lost it. If she can use a baking dish, and I said anything that is large enough to
Yes.
hold the other pan,
Yes.
and that
And the
holds the
water.
water,
Yes.
that can go all the way up.
And
out
it's
the
oven
wall.
safe. Anything. It doesn't matter if it's ceramic, glass, metal, none of that matters. It can be that disposable aluminum roaster that you buy. None of it matters so long as the cheesecake pan sits inside of that pan with enough water to meet it halfway up the side of the cheesecake pan. It doesn't matter what you put it in.
Martha asked if it's going to rise, and I said no.
No.
Because hers is almost all the way to the top of the pan.
No, so Martha, it's going to rise like a fraction of an inch. Not even enough to make it. It's not going to rise like a cake will, because there's no leavener in it. The eggs are the only leavener, and they're so diluted with all the other ingredients that it's not going to give a lot of rise to it. It may puff up just by the nature of the proteins being, saturated and fattened up by the heat, but it's going to sink right back down. So it may puff up just a tiny bit. I'm like 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch, but then it's going to settle right back down in the pan, so don't worry about that. It's not going to overflow the pan, as long as you're using a 9-inch pan. What size pan is she using? Do you know what size pan you're using, Martha? Even an 8-inch pan is okay. So 8 to 10-inch pan is where you want to go with cheesecakes. Nobody should even waste time with a 6-inch cheesecake, because who's going to eat just 6 inches worth of cheesecake? Not many people. It's probably a standard pan. Any more questions about the actual cheesecake?
No, somebody, it's a 9-inch pan.
Oh, then you're good. No, it's
How
fine.
it says.
Yeah, mine is a 9-inch pan, and it's just like 1/4. It's like a 1/2 inch.
Somebody forgot his plate, so you need to check them.
Somebody forgot their plate.
Yes.
Who forgot their plate?
Emanuel Ortiz,
Yeah.
the younger version
Of you?
of me. He
Listen.
he said he's too lazy to make the cheesecake. He only got one question. He's too lazy to make the cheesecake. Can you UPS one to him?
Nah, bro. No, we don't get down like that. Listen, you got kids and you got a whole fiance or girlfriend. You go ahead and you sweet talk one of the 4 of them into making you your cheesecake.
How smooth is your top?
How what?
How smooth was the top?
The top, I didn't go through a whole bunch of effort to make the top smooth, but it's pretty level. You want to make sure that it's even. You don't need to like smooth it out like icing. Just make sure that there's no it's not like this in the pan, because then it won't bake evenly. Just smooth it out and, do one of these numbers and you're good to go. You don't stress out about making it super smooth. If you don't want to go the water bath route, if you don't want to bake your cheesecake in a bain-marie, you need to decrease the bake time to 45 minutes. And you need to understand that if you end up with a crack in your cheesecake, that I told you so. Let's keep it real. We're going to keep it all the way 100 here. I told you to use a water bath because it is a foolproof way to ensure that your cheesecake will not have a crack in it. If you decide you don't want to go through the effort of baking it in a water bath, that is totally up to you, and I will respect your decision. Decrease the bake time from 1 hour and 15 minutes to 45 minutes. And
May the force be with you.
Yeah. May the odds be ever in your favor.
Jamie Webb said, "What's up?"
Hey, Jamie.
And Angie said that Riley has listened the whole time and is determined that they'll be
Go ahead,
having
Riley.
pumpkin cheesecake instead of pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving.
Riley's doing it because you know what? Pumpkin pie is nasty, and I'm willing to fight anybody that argues with me.
It's not.
I will fight you.
I know you
I'm
will.
not.
And you beat me, but
I loathe the pumpkin pie with a passion.
with the fake whipped cream.
I can't even eat it and not gag. And I make a bomb pumpkin pie, but it is the most repulsive thing that it is nasty to me. This pumpkin cheesecake has allowed me to pretend like I'm halfway normal and eat pumpkin something dessert for Thanksgiving. I cannot stomach pumpkin pie. I can't. So Riley is going to do the doggone thing. I almost cussed. I get cussed. So again, we are baking this for 1 hour and 15 minutes. When the timer goes off to let us know that the cheesecake is done baking, we're going to turn the oven. I want everybody to say that with me. Turn the oven off. Crack the oven up an inch and a half, the oven door. If your oven door won't stay open, just prop a wooden spoon in between the door and the oven frame of the oven. I use a wooden spoon because then when I go to remove it, it's not a metal spoon, which will burn me because it's been sitting somewhere for an hour. And let the cheesecake cool in the oven for an hour, okay? There's a method to my madness. I know a lot of people are gonna be like, it's not necessary. But have you ever been able to say that your cheesecakes have never had a crack in it? Because if you haven't, you can hush, okay? Because it is necessary. Let the cheesecake cool in the oven for an hour. Once it's done cooling in the oven for an hour, pull it out, take it out of the water bath, unwrap it. Remember, a little bit of water is okay. Let it sit on the countertop for 30 minutes to 45 minutes to cool, because you don't want to go from, it's still going to be fairly warm to putting it in the refrigerator, because what's going to happen is you're going to cover the cheesecake after it comes out of the oven, after you've unwrapped it and set it on the countertop. You're going to cover the cheesecake so that the top doesn't get exposed to that cold air and become gummy and crusty and nasty. If you cover it while it's still super warm straight out of the water bath, it's going to create condensation on the plastic or foil, and it's going to drip down onto the top, and the chef in me is going to be like, you got an ugly cheesecake. We don't want that. So we're going to let it cool at room temperature for 30 to 45 minutes before we wrap it with plastic or foil. And then we're going to put it in the refrigerator for 8 to 12 hours, or to make it super easy, overnight. I had a girlfriend who made one of my cheesecakes, and she was so excited, and God bless her. I mean, I get it. I would be excited too. And she kind of she rushed through the chilling process, and she told me, she's like, I should have let it rest for overnight. And we gotta respect that, because it was a Nutella cheesecake, so. But that's the cooling process. And yes, it is extensive, but it's so worth it in the end. And like I said earlier, if you weren't here because you showed up to class late, what was I talking about? See, I shouldn't even chastise you, because God is over here again. Oh, yeah, so what I was saying is that tomorrow at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, we're going to unveil our cheesecakes together. If you made it with me. If you didn't, then you're just going to watch me. Depan the cheesecake, and then I'm going to show you how to make the whipped cream topping that you can or can't. You don't have to put on it. I'm doing a maple whipped cream. Super easy. Not hard. Maple whipped cream. And you can decorate it if you want to. You guys, I put my boozy spiced cranberry sauce on this pumpkin cheesecake yesterday.
Yo, game changer.
The emotions that it evoked in me were ungodly. They were sinful, you guys. And if I was still Catholic, I would have had to repent, gone to confession, the whole nine. But thank God I'm Protestant now. And I just said, Jesus, forgive me. But it was bomb. I mean, those are the times where I know that I'm doing good. I know I am. So, boozy spiced cranberry sauce on this cheesecake, life-changing. I promise you it's life-changing.
D. Rousen said, what up?
Hey, D. Rousen.
And Jamie raised her hand. Looks like she has a question.
Questions?
Bobby ain't got no sense.
Bobby's silly.
He said because the oven is going to heat the house, he turned the heater off again. That boy got issues.
Bobby probably got as much money as the president, but refuses to heat his doggone house to a reasonable temperature. I'm going to pray for your children. And for Bruce, the little Scottish Terrier. I'm praying for all of them. Any questions?
Loida says hi.
Hi, Loida. My El Paso friends.
Oh my gosh. Deaconess is on, said what up?
Hi, Thee.
No, we got no questions.
No questions. Well then, I mean, class is done.
Carla's making her first cheesecake.
No, it's her first cheesecake.
Oh, and her daughter said she might fight you because that's pumpkin pie is what she makes every year.
Pumpkin pie is, listen, and it's not even a matter of it being the right pumpkin pie. Nobody's pie is the right pumpkin pie. It just, to me, it belongs in the trash. But my family, I think my husband loves pumpkin pie. I think my son likes it too. My daughter is very much like me. We detest pumpkin pie. But pumpkin cheesecake, as a matter of fact, for my kids, what was it, their 10th birthday? No, it was their 9th. One of their birthdays. You know, I have twins. They asked for pumpkin cheesecakes for their birthday in July. Do you know how hard it is to find pumpkin puree in July? It's tough, but I did it because my babies get what they want. But yeah, pumpkin pie is trash. I said it. Any other questions? Any questions about, well, you can ask me any questions. Food questions, ask me because I don't know much about anything else.
Joy Bass, Basie, Base?
Bice.
Joy? Bice.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Says hi.
Hi,
She loves that
Julie.
she's able to see you.
El Paso again. I love all my Paso friends are coming to see me.
Bobby said this was very helpful, that he'll tune in later.
Good. And don't forget, 10 o'clock tomorrow, we'll, depan the cheesecake and we'll, I'll show you how to pipe things. I mean, I can't, hold your hand, but I can show you everything I know about piping stuff. And, yeah, and that. But it needs to chill overnight because even if you chill it for 3 hours, it's going to be firm on the outside but really loose on the inside. And we don't want that. It's not good.
Jasmine said she'll come by after work to pick up her slice.
Okay, alright. You come on. I'm not even mad at that. Hector's having a hard time reading.
What's that?
Nothing.
They're going too fast for me.
Y'all going too fast for Hector.
Shauna Jones is Team Sweet Potato. Holla.
What happened?
Shauna Jones says she's Team Sweet Potato.
I got a sweet potato cheesecake on the wall. I can actually dance. Hold on. Because I'm looking like Hector. Hector does this. This is Hector's move. Everything. Everything. He does this. Hector. But I can dance. Listen. Right, Hector? I can dance.
I know you can dance.
I can dance.
Mandy Ferguson said pumpkin pie is such a gross consistency.
Ugh, it's so nasty.
Carla's daughter said, how dare she? So she gonna fight you. And she's in Austin, so that's she said.
Oh, that's just a run up.
That's just she roll by.
I told you I make gully cheesecake, so you know I got hood tendencies.
Jamie said that when are you making a Marta Biga video? I don't know about
I don't
that.
know if the world can handle me and Biga together, because sarcasm, not a lot of people can handle our sarcasm.
It's a little extra.
And people might get their feelings hurt, and I still gotta make money and make a living. So I don't know if the world's ready for me and Biga yet. Soon.
So let's remind them.
Yes.
Timer goes off.
Right. It's just kind of fun.
It is.
I like talking trash with these folks. I don't feel comfortable with talking trash to Carla's daughter though, because that's a child. That's somebody's baby. But her and her pumpkin pie can stay in Austin.
Carla wants to know if you will show them how to cut it.
Yes, I think that's very important. Yes, I will definitely show you how to cut a cheesecake because that is super important.
And if you missed the live, check the interwebs. It'll be on there.
And if anybody misses this live recording, God bless you. I feel sorry for you because it was lit. But there's always a recording. When the timer goes off, it tells you that the cheesecake has finished baking. You're going to turn the oven off, prop the oven door open 1 to 2 inches. I always use a wooden spoon just to make sure it stays open. Also, brief your family not to remove the spoon from the oven and close the oven door. And let the cheesecake cool in the oven with the oven door propped open for another hour. After that hour of cooling time has elapsed, pull the pan with the cheesecake in it out onto the counter. Take the cheesecake pan out of the outer pan that had the water in it. Unwrap the foil from the cheesecake pan, and leave the pan with the cheesecake on the countertop for 30 minutes to 45 minutes. You want to be able to hold your hand over the surface of the cheesecake and not feel any residual heat like emanating from the cake. Because if you feel heat from the cheesecake, that heat is going to transform into steam and condensation when you cover the cheesecake. So you want to make sure that you don't feel any heat whatsoever. Cover it with plastic wrap or aluminum foil and put it in the fridge for 6, 8, 12 hours. Overnight is always your safest bet. So what I'm going to do tonight, when this goes off, I'm going to cool it for an hour, pull it out, let it cool for 30 to 45 minutes, cover it, and then I'm going to put it in the fridge so that overnight it chills thoroughly. Tomorrow I'm going to pull it out and I'll show you what I do with it. I think cheesecake has to be my favorite. Is cheesecake my favorite dessert? I think cheesecake is my favorite dessert, and that's why you can find so many cheesecakes on Sense and Edibility. So Nutella cheesecake, coquito cheesecake, pumpkin cheesecake, sweet potato cheesecake, apple streusel cheesecake, regular cheesecake. What other cheesecakes have I? Baklava cheesecake. I made a honey cheesecake with baklava crust. I feel like there's more cheesecakes lingering. An hour. And then you're going to let the cheesecake cool in the oven like that. See how the oven is slightly propped open? It's going to cool gradually for 1 hour. Okay. Okay, now I'm taking, it's sat in here for an hour. I'm taking it out of the oven and putting it on the countertop. And I'm going to take it out of here and then unwrap it. Sit it on there and let it cool for half an hour to 45 minutes.